He stole my village. I will find them. I will bring them home.
Welcome to our roundtable with the cast of Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. I'm here with Owen Teague, Freya Allan, director Wes Ball, Kevin Durand, and Peter Macon. How's everyone doing today? Everyone is great.
It's a wonderful day.
What a wonderful day!
Yes, it is. Absolutely. Apes together strong. I want to start out by talking about the history of this franchise. This is a 56-year-old franchise, incredibly important to science fiction filmmaking. Why is it still so relevant today?
There's many theories on this, of course. There could be papers written on this whole thing, but I think there's two things about it that these movies always, in a way, hold up a mirror to ourselves. You know, we see ourselves in these apes, and it always sort of talks about sort of, you know, important issues of the day, even though it's in this fantasy science fiction concept thing and this really interesting upside down, you know, world that's just completely fascinates people. But I also think these movies always have an element of spectacle to them. You know, in '68, it was the best kind of makeup effects you've ever seen in your life. You know, and then by the time the reboots come around, 2011, you know, we have some of the best CG visual effects artistry that you've ever seen in your life. So I think Francois Truffaut is the guy that talked about, you know, great movies are ones that blend spectacle and truth, and that's kind of what we try to do. You know,
I got into the business because I wanted to escape from myself and become something else, and never have I ever had such an incredible license to get away from myself like I did in this movie. We were able to become a different species. So, we got to study the anatomical differences, idiosyncratic differences. All of those things informed such different kind of behavior. And then our human filter kind of filtered all that stuff. And then, you know, we ended up becoming these magnificent apes, and it was just such an incredible trip. It was like the ultimate trip as an actor to get to play this type of character. I think we all kind of felt that, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think it almost becomes easier to for the audience, you know, to examine our place as humans in the universe when we're looking at, as Wes said, a mirror of ourselves in another species. But as an actor, I think it's also it almost allows you to go places with more safety than you know you sometimes get to go in other characters. And I think it teaches you things about yourself as a performer and as a human being that you don't otherwise realize. That was certainly my experience with just studying, you know, apes and working with apes and then trying to become one myself. That, you know, my conception of what it means to be human has changed entirely.
It also afforded us this great experience where, you know, we got to know each other as apes before we got to know each other as humans. Yeah. So it's like this double fold type of connection to someone. So whenever we greet each other, and I'm sure we'll do this for the rest of our lives, we always greet each other as apes first. And it's not something that we intellectualize. I think it's just instinctually, because that's how we met first.
And it's so funny because, like, I knew that this would, you know, this is how you and I greet each other every time we see each other. But I haven't seen Peter in many months, and when I saw you walk in over there, it was instant orangutan and chimp. And we didn't even think about it.
When we met up in New York, and you're just like walking towards me as a chimp in the middle of New York. You know, that was great. Like you're never not.
It's
you never don't come to me as well. Like
I know, that's how I always greet you, and but you're a human, and so I guess it extends across the species.
Well, Freya, this is actually this is something I really wanted to talk to you about as it relates to your character, because May is, for large stretches of the film, the only human character on screen, and I wonder, on set, as you guys were filming the movie, did being the only one not in mocap gear kind of give you that sort of other sense? Did that help your performance at all?
You know what? I think I was cast quite late. So I remember coming in and I felt like the new kid, you know, at school. And I think that there was always kind of that sensation that they were going through this very kind of bonding experience of Apes School. And I dipped my toe in and out, but I wasn't really there in the same way, obviously. And so there was always that kind of natural separation, even though we were all so close, you know, and we all became really good friends. But it did always feel like, even in terms of in the morning, you know, I'd come in and I'd have all my dirt put on me, and I was always a little bit separate in that way. And then even, you know, having to do all the scenes on my own, and that felt very lonely and kind of scary. And I felt like that was, you know, something where I just felt quite alone in. And so that kind of, I think, probably subconsciously helped in a way.
Yeah, I think that's actually worth mentioning, is like, she's got to make it real for the audience. You know, she's got to look at, not see this actor with funny dots on their face and gray suits. You know, she's got to see an ape. She's got to make the audience believe that this is real, because there's still months and months of process to go through to convert them over to these amazing technical kind of, you know, inventions essentially on screen. And so I think Freya had a really tough job ahead of her to be kind of the only real thing in the frame, essentially, you know.
To that end, after doing Ape Camp and after bonding with these guys, at the end of the day on set, we had to throw away the idea of forget that we had like these cameras in our face and all this equipment and all this stuff.
Wearing technology, but still play the scene. Because you go back to look at playback, and there's no information really available for the actor, because it's like you're just seeing yourself. I mean, emotional information, like, because I don't know what this is going to look like down the road. I have to wait and see. So we was trusting the eye of Wes and then just playing the scenes with each other as if, you know, we were still in the ape camp, or if we're just playing the scenes as human beings, or not even thinking, but just playing the scene together and forgetting about everything else, because we didn't have access to what we have now, which is like the full rendered. So you're just having to trust that you're making the connection with your scene partner and let that go and let that play. And I feel like that's what really played through in the end, is what we see, like these three dimensionalities of these characters, because when we're doing it, we're wearing technology and we're suspending our disbelief. Like, I've never done a show like that. I've never done any sort of performance where I can't really gauge what I'm doing fully, you know, because it's the information that's not available. So you just have to go back to the basics of just playing the scene and talking and listening. Be honest.
Yeah.
I was going to say, like, to give you guys credit, I feel like that wasn't the harder part of it for me, visualizing you as apes, because people would ask, you know, are you trying to see an ape? And I said no, because they're so good at it.
Also,
you know?
you're looking at me, so
Yeah, exactly. It's not much
We're
different.
pretty close.
But it was like, it was more like when they were taken out, and I'd have to do stuff like, I remember that one scene where Samuel's coming towards me, and obviously I had to do it without him, and he's coming towards me with a knife, and then he's like grabbing me, and I had to do all that with no one there, and it was the weirdest thing.
But people don't realize that I have to shoot the movie twice. I shoot the movie with the scene like a typical movie, with all the actors and all the apes in the frame with Freya there, and then I have to go and shoot another clean plate, which is really what the shot becomes, because the apes get put into that. And Freya's got to hit all the same marks, hit all the same timings, work with the camera. It's an incredibly technical, precise process that is very difficult. She could repeat the same moves, the same timings, everything, like some robot or something. It was amazing, you know. Yeah, and I remember Weta was saying it was the best they'd seen. You know what I mean?
Oh, really?
Because like Freya would just do the exact thing. You could line up the two takes, and they would just hit the mark. She would look over, and there would be an ape there, and then someone's over here, and we did some really dynamic kind of camera moves in this thing. So it was really complicated, and you know, it was fun. It was hard, but.
Well, Freya, our audience would definitely know you from your work on The Witcher. Did any of your experience kind of working with the CG monsters of that show port over to this experience for you?
It's quite different, because when I'm having to deal with the monsters, I'm either fighting against them, or I'm just kind of seeing them, and I get to see, you know, what they're going to look like. And it's just different. I get to do, like with the fighting, it's like a dance. And so it's not as tricky, if I'm honest.
You're acting with them.
Exactly. The difficulty in this was having to talk, like do a whole like scene where I'm just talking to air and I don't have anyone's eyes to look into, and I'm looking at some tree in the distance, you know, and.
Pretty close. It's pretty close to a giant.
Yeah, you are actually quite close to a tree.
Got some snow on the top there today.
Yeah, I think that was because it was interesting hearing you guys talk about how you felt more free in what you got to do, and when I had to do those clean plates, I felt so like confined to the technical side of it that it was kind of in moments suffocating, but luckily we were able to do the closer shots usually with I was able to then look at them because, you know, and so I was always relieved when it was the closer shots, because then I could have someone to actually look at, you know.
For the most part, I tried to always use, when it's really important shots where you have to believe this thing, I tried to use the shots where Owen or the other characters were in the frame with Freya. Because, you know, this is not just counting what you're capable of, but you can tell when you're engaging with another person on the other side. So we tried to lean on that as much as we could on the technical side of things.
I have a name. Meg.
Wes, in an interview recently, you actually said that you're planning to release a cut on the home release of this movie that doesn't include the CG, that is going to showcase everyone's performances fully. I want to know, it sounds like this might be news to some of you. I want to know why that's important to be able to share with fans. And for the actors here, how you feel, is that kind of scary? Do you feel like that's an extra level of vulnerability that people are going to see in this performance?
There's no vulnerability left when you're running around as an ape on set.
You're wearing a very tight suit.
Very flattering. It's very
Running
flattering
around
on the
acting like
audience.
another creature. I mean, you know, you have to like leave all of that at the door, anyways.
We have no shame.
Yeah, there's no shame here. I mean,
That'd be a great teaching tool.
Yeah,
I do too.
To just to see what we actually had to do and how it translated. I mean, I think that would be incredibly informative. I'm a
little scared of my face. Because it was like the thing that I loved the most was that I wasn't thinking about, do I look good on this angle? At all, ever, not even once during this. So like the vanity in me is quietly screaming, please don't. But then the rest of me says, yes, I want to see this thing.
You know what I think they should release the actual like footage where it was the camera right there, because that was the best angle ever.
That's
That's
I won't do that.
that might even be a little
But
bit
honestly,
far for us.
that is why I want to show this to people, because when you see them side by side, because basically that's how I want to display it, where you see the final render and the actual thing on the bottom, and you see you guys in the dinner table scene, the ape and you. It's exactly the same performance and shot, and it's just amazing to see.
So exciting.
And I don't know, I think people tend to feel, because there's so much kind of mystery and this kind of visual magic that Weta does, I think it's going to be impressive to see just the amount of artistry involved with this process. There's no button that says make ape. This is thousands of really talented technicians and artists and storytellers that, make this stuff real and, immerse us in a world that is otherwise completely impossible. You know what I mean? So I think I also think it's a damn shame these movies have never won a visual effects Oscar before, and we're going to try to help that.
Yeah,
I like that.
And on that note, I'm excited for people to, there's a misconception about performance capture
That it's somehow animated. It's not.
and to see the work that these guys and myself and the rest of the cast are actually doing, and how much the apes are us. Like that is our performance, and it's a direct translation.
And you'll see some of those claim plates where Freya is acting to nothing.
Yeah.
See me hugging the air like a loser.
Well, I know for me as a fan, just a fan of the technique and really as a fan of the characters in this film, I'm always trying to see through that kind of ape mask to the performer beneath. So I'm actually
Visual
very
effects
excited
makeup
for this.
Yeah.
Yep.
And there's real artistry that happens. These guys drive the performance and drive the choices and all these little subconscious things that you do. And we spend a lot of time. Oh, see that little 2 millimeter twitch that happened? We got to get that right. Well, I was one shot on yours. I spent months on trying to get it just right. And it comes down to eye shapes, but there's artist interpretation that happens after that. There's no one-stop button that makes it happen. And so we spent a lot of time capturing all this information with not just the cameras in front of your face. We had about 12 witness cams all around the scene at the same time. So, and there's on top of that all the infrared cameras. So it's an incredible kind of like invasive sort of process to the creative process of it all, but it's necessary to get to the end result. You know what I mean?
Wow. Yeah.
It's really, really fascinating. I think it's just, it blows my mind constantly when I see these shots coming in.
Yeah.
Well, for a movie that is so reliant on performance capture, Wes, what do you, when you look back on the experience here, what do you feel like are the major learnings as a director that you plan to carry forward into future projects?
Look, it's a very technical process. I always describe it as kind of like you're building a jigsaw puzzle piece by piece, all separate, kind of in the air, individually, trying to get all the shapes to fit just right, imagining how that's going to connect over there. And none of it connects until like the last couple months before you release the movie. So there's an incredible amount of trust. Obviously, I'm with the best visual effects company in the world that, you know, have proved this before. So there's a lot of trust there already and confidence that was going to work. But it is really hard to hold all those different layers unconnected for a while and make these choices that you make, you know, early on that you won't see the results of for months. You know what I mean? So that's a very unique process. But ultimately, I got to tell you, at the end of the day, what it comes down to is what Owen was talking about. It's two actors, you know, great actors sitting there engaging with each other, making the moment honest and true. And then after that, it's all a technical process of just holding on to that reality. And that's what we spend a lot of time on.
Also, to that end, Wes, like, I feel like the movie that I saw was pretty much the exact same movie that you and I talked about over Zoom 2 years ago with the storyboard and the vision, and you walking me through the arcs, and to have a director that has such a visceral and specific, you know, vision for this film, and to see how that translates, and I would not want to be inside his mind to go, like, as we're shooting on location.
As he plays.
And oh yes, no, not for the faint of heart. But to having been explained this film, you know, just via Zoom, and then watching him build the thing as we're doing it, and then seeing the end result. It's exactly the same, you know, like and just that's this in motion, you know. So like to have, you know, a director that, or someone behind, like someone wielding everything and is in control and responsible for the vision, and it was a no-brainer, phenomenal. Like, it was just, I'm just amazed that it's exactly like what he said it was going to be.
And to feel like when you go into work every day, like everything's going to be okay because of him. Like the trust that we all put in the film because of his vision, you know, like I don't think I wouldn't have been able to do it if not for that.
Well, thank you, but I will also say I had a lot of crazy talented people around me. So,
yeah,
you know, it wasn't just me for sure, but thank you.
Well, the visual effects are half of it, but we also know that you guys have talked about, you've kind of been talking around this a little bit, that everyone spent a little time in ape school prior to shooting the movie, that Andy Serkis was involved with kind of coaching this next generation of apes into how to bring those creatures to life. Could you talk about what that experience working with Andy was like to sort of find that movement, how that worked?
I had a really great session, like just one-on-one with him, because not only are we studying the physicality of these apes, but how it translates to, because my character is he's very chatty. I mean, he's very and so making that bridge between articulation and how like physically the human larynx works as opposed to like the orangutan's larynx and their muscles in their throat and neck. That was actually very, very difficult process to make it, to speak with clarity and specificity, but not colloquially as a human being. And just breaking that down with Andy was incredibly helpful. And so, and to say cannot instead of can't, like the very formalized way and approach with the language, because there were times, when you're trying to pick the words up off the page, and it's like, well, this sounds like a human being wrote this and a human being is speaking this, and this doesn't work. So that kind of work was really necessary to dig in and do like this sort of text analysis and truncating words so that you don't sound too eloquent, too human, and that kind of work. He was enormously helpful, and he's just such a generous soul. So that was really great for me.
I never had a chance to work with Andy. I was kind of late to the party. Alain Gauthier, who he was like our everyday movement guy, and he's the one that broke down the anatomical differences. He's the one that showed us how to move like an ape. I was inspired by Andy, of course. I was such a giant fan way before I went into this, but Alain is really the one that worked with me every day for a long time, and all the discussions we had and all of the movement that I got to do, I attribute to my work with him.
He was kind of the one leading Ape School, and then Andy came in a few weeks into what Peter and I and the rest of the Apes, minus Kevin, unfortunately, had 6 weeks before production started, and Andy came in sort of via Zoom 2-3 weeks in and did a few sessions with us, and that sort of work of figuring out the voice and the speech, and also encouraging us to improvise with each other and to go on these journeys, in character, of just discovering what instinctually we wanted to bring to our characters. He would give us situations, sort of like prompts, and we would just play in these situations that he would create for us.
Now, was that restricted to Ape School? Because I have to imagine that improvising any sort of interactions between the apes on set must be kind of
Yeah, we do that all the time.
Yeah.
We change things constantly.
Yeah.
I don't storyboard a lot. We go on set and we find it together.
Yeah.
And then I figure out how to shoot it. I maybe have some ideas, but I love letting them do what feels right. I trust that instinct, and then I try to figure out how to shoot it with my DP Jula, So there's a lot of spontaneity in the movie. Of course, we have to limit it usually to where the cameras are set up, the motion capture cameras, and sometimes there were cases where I'm not shooting here, we're changing it over there, and we have to take 30 minutes to an hour to shift it all, but it was worth it, you know what I mean?
And Elaine would be there with us every step of the way, every take, coming and giving us notes, and helping us remember where our center of gravity should be and how we need to turn, but just helping us stay specific and maintaining the work, because we had a solid concentrated 6 weeks where we're just doing only that, and then you start to bring in all these other elements, and things get a little slippery in terms of trying to remember everything. You're trying to hit your marks and whatever. There's a horse, whatever, but Elaine would be there to just keep us mindful of the work that was inside of us that we built.
And of course, the species move differently too. Did you ever catch each other sort of taking something from somebody else's movement that may not be appropriate to your species of ape?
I mean,
monkey see, monkey do.
I'm not sure about
I don't think so.
Species,
No.
but there was, in terms of, for me at least, with especially the speech patterns and the vocal thing, you kind of catch other people's rhythm. If you're not careful. And I remember at the beginning of Ape School, we would sort of be I'd be working with Peter and running a scene with him, and I'd start catching Peter's rhythm and have to kind of watch out for that.
I noticed myself doing that with you, actually.
Really?
Oh, really?
Yeah, because also you're trying to, when you're having a conversation with someone, you do sometimes subconsciously start matching what they're doing. And I noticed during filming that I was that I was doing that, and I had to kind of ease my way out of it, because I noticed that it was very difficult to dance with
that's all around
different,
you. Yeah, sure.
timing.
Well, speaking of that, like as a sponge of you could talk about this a little bit, Owen, but your character in the movie is just very much of a blank slate,
Right.
And his story is about how these different figures step into his life and sort of shape him into the character he's ultimately becomes by the end of the movie, but also ultimately will become in the future movies that we hope to make. And along the motion side of things, is like a lot of times I'll see some of the animation in just skeletal form when it's early days, right? I can usually pick out which actor is which just by their movement, just by the skeleton. I can tell, oh, that's Lydia, oh, that's Owen, oh, that's Peter. I can usually tell that stuff. But I think what's really interesting watching it in the movie, maybe this is a conscious choice on your part, but as Owen goes through the story, there are things that I see, and I think they're very apparent, where you see, like for Proximus, for instance, when he meets Proximus and Proximus steps into his life, the character of Noah, starts taking on certain things from Proximus, word patterns, different, like the way he holds himself. You see, yeah, exactly. You see how he's starting to change and be influenced by these characters around him as a character. I think it's
That was
really
a
interesting
conscious
stuff.
decision.
Yeah, nice job.
Yeah, thanks.
This is important.
They get cold. Show mercy.
Wes, our audience would probably crush me under a large rock if I didn't ask this. You obviously have experience adapting the Maze Runner franchise. You've stepped into the Apes franchise. We are all incredibly excited to see what you do with what is Legend of Zelda. That's what it's called.
What?
Yeah.
What?
It sounds like it's going to be real cool. If you can think of one thing that you learned making Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes that is going to serve you well in that experience, what do you think it's going to be?
I've said it before, but it's this: you learn something with every movie you make. I've made 4 movies, and each one I think we take the lessons that we've learned into this new adventure. Every movie is different. There's always challenges. I think probably the main job of a director is to problem solve. That's the way I see it. That's my job. But I've always learned through all of them that you trust the talent around you. You try very hard to put the money on the screen where it belongs, and you try to stay ambitious. And I personally am a giant fan of Zelda, and I wouldn't do the movie if I didn't think that we could do something that was worthy. That's pretty much all I can say before Nintendo jumps out of the bushes.
Yeah, I see. Yeah, I said the trees are rustling. They're coming down. They're here.
Now it is our time. And it is my kingdom.
I do notice that this is the first Apes movie that we've had post-pandemic. And I really connected to the story in revisiting the Caesar trilogy to prep for watching this movie. It hits a little differently. What was everyone's experience kind of making and watching the movie after we've all kind of gone through that experience?
Actually, when we were having our conversations and trying to figure out my backstory, which hadn't actually really been created, so we were kind of forming it together, I feel like there's stuff there that's like really close to what, us, like we can kind of understand or be as close as we could to imagining how that could potentially be from where my character has come from. And so, I guess there's a massive
more
parallel
of
there.
that story in the future that will be a thing. That was kind of I think the brilliant concept by Rick and Amanda when they rebooted with Rise. This idea of a virus created by mankind that ultimately is responsible for this huge upside down twist that happens. And obviously you're right. Making the movie was weird, because we were just coming down off COVID basically, but. Interesting enough, when we were writing the movie at the peak of COVID, we talked a lot about the main kind of overarching kind of idea behind the movie is knowledge is power. And more specifically, knowledge as a virus that you can catch, that you can spread, that it can change you in some way. And it's a very much kind of an idea that you see echoed throughout the entire movie in subtle ways. But I think it changed the world. It changed the business. As human beings, we adapt and, continue on.